Hey, don't forget your brush!
Hello and welcome to ArtShed. I'm Kathy, and in this video we're going to be learning how to draw a realistic looking lion's head using charcoal. Charcoal is just burnt wood, but artists love to draw with charcoal because you can get so many different effects. You can make it really black, and you can also smudge it around on the paper using your fingers, so it's really good fun. So for this project, you're going to need to find yourself some charcoal, and you're going to need an ordinary piece of cartridge paper. Just check that your paper has a little bit of grip to it and it's not silky smooth, because if it's silky smooth, it'll be a little bit more difficult to get the charcoal to grip to the paper. So to get started on this drawing, it's going to be really helpful to have a grid on your piece of paper. So divide your piece of paper in half and draw a line, and then you want to divide it into three parts, 1, 2, 3. They don't have to be exactly equal, so you can just judge it with your eye. I just did it with my fingers like this, because it doesn't have to be exact. The reason that's going to help us, let me show you. So there's my grid I'm going to be drawing on, but here's what I've already drawn, so you can see there's my grid there. And why it's helpful is because it's going to help us kind of judge where to put everything. You can probably see that my nose is sitting right there in the middle of my lines, and my eyes are sitting on that line. So it's just going to really help me know exactly where to put things. So once you've got your grid, let's start the drawing. So here's mine. So we're going to say goodbye to him for a minute, and actually we're going to use this picture to refer to, because this is going to be really helpful to see where to put everything. So we're going to start with this section here, because this little point here is going to be really useful. And we're going to start building up his nose. So just there's a triangle shape. It's not very big. And the point of it sits exactly on that bit there. Once you've got that, we're just going to do a little straight line that heads towards another triangle here. That's going to be his mouth, the start of his mouth. And that triangle is just a little bit wider. So we're going to go back to his nose. Now the best thing really is to work out how high the top of his nose is. So let's have a look here. So I want to judge roughly. I'm going to put a little marker just to help me get it in the wrong place. Right, not the wrong place, get it in the right place. That's exactly why I'm putting the marker there. Silly me. And then I'm going to do a really faint, now I'll make this darker in a minute, kind of like a curvy shape, a very shallow smile. So now that I'm happy with it, I'll do it darker so you can see it. Okay, so it's not a straight line, it's a sort of curvy line, and that's going to just be this bit, the top of his nose. And then either end kind of dips over, so it ends up going like this. So eventually you can turn it all into one line like that. And then those bits are going to join the triangle that we've already drawn. So if you watch this first, it comes in a little bit, and then it goes round to join the triangle. So it comes in, and then it goes round to join the triangle. Now don't worry if it's not exactly the same on either side. this is kind of, we'll just practice the drawing. You can always do it again later on. So mine's not going to look exactly like this one because again I'm drawing it again and I'm going to do it differently every time. So now it kind of looks like he's got these horns coming out. These are actually his nostrils. So if you really have a good look at a real lion, you'll see those marks. So they come out here like a long sort of bean shape. You can always rub out if you've got things. I'm not going to be too fussy here, even if they aren't exactly the same. It doesn't really matter. I know on my face I've got one eye that's definitely smaller than the other eye. So I'm sure this lion has a nostril that's a different shape to his other nostril. Okay, so that's actually his nose shape. So we'll go back to his mouth. So we've already got this little triangle. And now, this is quite a good judge because we're going to do a sort of smiley mark. It's going to go just here. So that's roughly coming out to my horns there. I've probably gone up a bit far. And then we're going to do a curve coming round here and joining this smiley bit here. And we'll do his beardy bit just here, so that's nice and easy. That's just going to come off his chin and it's just going to wiggle round. It's all very beardy. There we go. So we're going to start working our way up towards his eyes. So these two lines here, that's going to be, I guess it's kind of his snout. So let's have a line that goes like that. It doesn't go all the way up to that line. See if we can get one roughly the same on the other side. It can be quite tricky, but let's try. Okay, I'm going to have a good look at that line, see if I can get it roughly the same. After we've done this drawing, I'll show you how you could do it in a much easier way by using tracing paper. But I think it's always good to have a go at drawing first because it really helps train our eyes to look at things. Okay, so I'm quite happy with those two lines. There's another line, that they have this line down the middle of their forehead. Can you see it here? So I'm going to put that one in. That's going to help remind me, this one's a little bit off there. I'm going to stick to this line here and bring it just down. There we go. Just down to about there. So his eyes are sitting on this line. Now it doesn't really matter if they're above it or below it, but they're somewhere on this line. So I'm going to start by putting in this shape first, and then I'm going to put my eyeball in. So this is quite useful here because I'm going to go up a little bit to about here, and then I'm going to do a diagonal line that goes that way. And it's quite helpful if I do it on the other side at the same time. Okay, so there it is. So roughly it's about there, and roughly it ends up about there. Okay, so there it is. And then I've got another sort of slopey line that goes up a little bit. It's not as long, but it goes up to there. And then it comes back down like that. So have a go at that. Goes up a bit. And then it goes back down. Then in there, in this roofy bit here, this is where we're going to put the eyeball. Now I would do it really lightly first. Get yourself a sort of circle shape. The top of the circle is cut off by the thing that we've just drawn. So what I would do is do them both first really lightly. Can you see that I'm kind of just stroking the paper, trying to get roughly the same shape and size so that my eyes are roughly the same. I think that's okay. So when I'm kind of happy with that, then I can go around it. With my pencil. I think he's going to have quite big eyes, this lion. Okay. Now inside there, I'm going to want another circle just about here. I think I can kind of draw that one in one go. And then I'm going to remind myself later on that I'm going to have this little section at the top of his eye that needs to stay white. Then we've got to put in this section here, this bit at the bottom of his eye, which starts from here, and it's probably good to try and do this in one go if you can. So if you watch me first, it comes up and it goes under the eyeball and up to that corner there. Now this is where I'll be able to tell whether my eyes look the same or if they're really quite different. So I'm going to go up to the eye, around and up there. So they don't look too bad to me. They're actually quite a lot bigger than this lion's eyes, but that's okay. Might look quite nice. Okay, so we've done that line, we've got his eyes in, so I'm just going to put his eyelid in, which is here. It's just going to go across. And again, try and roughly have it in the same place. And then underneath his eye, he's got a line later on, but this will remind us, curves round and goes down like this. There's a line that this patch here stays white. There we go. We're nearly there with our drawing. So we're going to put on a line that's going to help us later on to work out where his face is. So from here, we're just going to have a line that goes up like that comes out the side of his mouth area here. And again, let's see if I can get it roughly the same on the other side. Maybe if I do it lightly first, I can tell because my hand's in the way. There we go. Yeah, I think that's okay. And then there's one more line, which is kind of the edge of his cheekbones, which comes down from his eye and then curves round like that. Now already when I go over here, it looks like I don't have so much room. And that's probably because that eye is quite a lot bigger than this one, which is probably what you can see better than me. So I might have to rub this line out here. And I'm going to put this line in first, and then I can see how much room I've got for the other line. There we go. So that line just needed to be slightly different angle. In fact, I'm going to do that line one more time. See, I think it's important for you to see that I don't get things right first time. Very rarely do I get things right the first time. There we go. So, just one more thing to put in are his ears. And as long as they're somewhere up here, maybe you don't want them here and here, but they're kind of at the edge. Coming off. I quite like mine coming off because we go. You don't actually have to see his ears. He could have such a big mane that it's absolutely obscuring his ears. There we go, this is roughly one there. So you might want to have a go at that a few times. And I'm going to show you now a much easier way to do it if you want to. So for example, let's say I really liked this eye and I wanted it to be exactly the same on this side. You can always trace it. So for example, you can get a piece of tracing paper, make sure your grid lines are there, because then you can always line it up. And then what you can do with a pencil is trace that eye. Now obviously this is a different eye, I think this was the eye from this one. So let me use this so that might be a bit more helpful. Here we go. So you can see I traced that eye. And then I folded my piece of tracing paper, well, I turned it over, and then you can now see that what I can do, because I've got the pencil marks on the other side, I can draw over it like this, and you'll find that the pencil marks come onto your paper. Just make sure your grid lines up, and then you can got it in the same place. You could do that with your whole face. So you could do those marks, flip it over and do it on the other side, and then you would have a perfectly symmetrical face. Once you've got a drawing that you're happy with, so I'm happy enough with this one, I moved a few lines around. I think I shrunk that bit because I thought it was a bit wide. And what I'm going to do now is rub out these lines. Now they're a bit darker than I would normally do, just so that you can see them. So in future, if you do it again, you have to do really faint lines. To be honest, we won't see them once we put the charcoal on anyway. So I'm just going to rub those out. The important thing about doing a drawing like this, which is just black and white, is to think about which areas in your picture are really dark and which areas need to stay really light. So you can see in this picture here, the darkest bits are his mouth, his nostrils, and these bits around his eyes. And I guess those are the bits that kind of go into his body. And just round here too is really dark, because that's kind of underneath his chin. The really light bits are bits like here and just the highlight in his eye. Now that's really important that we try and keep that white, because that's where the sun or the light is just bouncing out of his eyes, and that's really what makes him look quite alive. So we've got quite a few white patches on his face, but don't worry, because we can always rub the charcoal out and get some white back again. So what we're going to be doing is, with your piece of charcoal, that's best if you have a piece of tissue ready, because your hands could get quite mucky at this point. And also have yourself a piece of paper, just any piece of paper will do, because later on you're going to be leaning on your drawing with that, and it might already have charcoal on, so what you're going to be doing is leaning on this paper instead, rather than messing your drawing up underneath. So I'm going to get myself a piece of charcoal. There we go. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to find those really, really dark areas, and I'm going to colour them in. So I'm going to start with his mouth. We will have to go over these again later on. And that line there, and then this triangle is also dark. And then these bits were really dark. And that one. Now the nose is quite dark too, so I'm going to kind of just go around it. And maybe just go a little bit around the edges. It can be quite scruffy because we're going to be blending this with our fingers in a minute. So that will do for now. Then I'm going to go up here, now these bits are really dark. So I'm going to go around his eye and colour these bits in. And this is the pupil in his eye. That's also going to be dark, so I'm going to colour that in. But I'm going to be really careful not to do that white bit on the top. And then I'm going to go around the lines of my eye, because those are really dark. And I'll do the eyelid as well. And then I'm going to move over to this eye. Now this is where you'll see that I'm going to have to lean on this bit. So this is where I'm going to put my paper down. And that way I don't have to disturb the charcoal I've put on the paper already. So those are the darkest bits on his face. So now I'm going to find those bits around his face here. So I'm going to go around these edges. Just down here, I'm going to bring that line down. I'm just going to remind myself it's really dark around this side of his face. There's also a dark patch just here. I'm just going to put a little bit of that in now, and later on I'm going to make it darker. So I'm just going to remind myself that's also dark there. So the next thing to do, once we've put this really darkest darks in, I'm just going to go over some of the lines with my charcoal. So the rest of the lines, I'm just going to draw them with charcoal. And then what I'm going to do here is just this very bottom bit, I'm going to start scrubbing in some of my charcoal, because this bit's going to be quite dark at the bottom. Because I think this part is kind of his body, which is not quite as hairy as his mane. Okay, and I think I've just forgotten the edges of the ears. We'll just do that. And just under, we're just going to put a bit of dark under his beardy bit here. It's going to all be quite scruffy because we're going to be blurring it with our fingers. Okay, so you can put your piece of charcoal down. At this point, you're just going to need your fingers. And we're going to start smudging most of these lines. So let's start with his nose. Go back to his nose and just gently, you're going to rub the charcoal into your paper. And don't worry if it starts to smudge everywhere, because we're going to do another layer. Okay, even this dark bit, you can smudge it because we're going to put more on later on. Okay. And then we can smudge all our lines. Okay, this dark bit here, just really push it into the paper. Okay, so I've smudged everything. I haven't got to his eyes yet, because we need to be a little bit more careful when we do his eyes, because we want to try and keep this top section white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to smudge these bits in, and as I get to this bit of his eye, which I guess is your iris, which is the coloured bit, because his is a kind of goldy brown colour, I'm going to bring some of that dark into it, but I'm not going to go right to the top of his eye. So if I zoom in there, you can probably see I'm going to leave, I'm not going to smudge that top bit. I'm smudging all round it, but I'm leaving that very top bit. So if you can see that eye compared to that eye, you can see what I've done there. So let's do that with this eye. Use the dark. If you need to use your little finger because you've done your drawing smaller, you can. Okay, don't worry if you lose some of that dark. I see I've lost it there, but I can put it back in later on. The main thing at this point is that I don't want to lose that white bit at the top. Okay, so he's really beginning to look at you now. So we've done our first layer. So now we're going to start working on building up his mane. And you might be able to see around the edge of this, we've got quite a dark layer going around his whole face. So we're going to start there. So we'll start with the top of his head and start making some sort of marks that are a bit like hair. I suppose they can be a bit flicky. This is a good starting point because you can come out from, okay, so just do some flicky marks at the top of his head there. And round this edge bit, they're just going to be a little bit darker. Okay, so you can be quite scribbly. Let's do this side. Okay, so what we're going to do now is start doing what we did before. We're going to start smudging all this. So you can put your charcoal down, use your fingers again. And this time you can be quite scruffy with it. Bring some of it down onto his head, onto his face rather. Flick up. So you're kind of flicking with your fingers as well. We've worked on the first layer round his mane. We're going to put more on that. So now we're going to work on his face. Don't worry, like my eyes are all a bit smudgy there, but I can fix those later on. At this point, it's still going to all look quite messy, and then we get the rubber out and we can fix bits. Charcoal is always a bit messy, but it's great fun. So let's start building up his snout. So we're going to put some shading just on the top of his nose area. So just from about here, you can do some lines. Use the side of your charcoal. And then all the way up, right up to about there. You've got some lines. Now we're going to smudge those in. And then you can put some more, maybe going in a different direction. You kind of don't want, if you can see here, you've got lots of straight lines. You don't really want lots of straight lines, so you might want to go over it again with the side of your charcoal so that you can't see all these straight lines. Okay, there you go. So I'm getting rid of them now. So now each time you put some charcoal on, you're going to smudge it with your finger. Now this bit, these parts are we're going to get these darker, but we're going to keep this section here pale. So I'm going to start putting some charcoal in here. So I'm kind of just colouring this section in. I'm going to bring this bit of his eye down a little bit. See, I've kept that bit white if I can. If you haven't, we can rub it out later, so it's not, don't worry. I'm going to do the same on this side. Let's fill this section in. And join the eye up with that bit there. So now you can kind of start to see his snout coming out at you. So I'm just going to check, because now I've done these, I can see that this side's quite a lot wider than this side. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this line in a little bit, so that he's kind of a bit more symmetrical. Okay. So I'm just going to go around the edges here again. So we're just kind of building up the darks and the lights in our picture. There are two sort of marks that you'll often see on a line above his eyes, so that goes in that direction. So we'll put one there and another one. I mean, every lion's face will be different, and actually when you do your drawing, it's be quite good to look at a real lion. I looked at a real lion when I drew this picture here. Well, a photo of a real lion. I didn't have a real lion sitting in my studio. That would be quite scary, wouldn't it? So I'm going to make this area a bit darker. So now I'm just playing around. I'm just looking at my picture to remind myself which bits are dark. So all you're looking for is dark bits and light bits. And you put them, each time now you put it on, you rub it in. I'm going to start fixing his eyes. So I want to get that nice, clear, round shape. I'm just drawing that back in because I lost that. And I'm going to make the top of his eyelid a little bit heavier with a thicker line. You can see him now really staring at you. I'm going to need my piece of paper now because I'm going to be working on this eye. So I lost his iris there, so I'm going to get that back again by just drawing it in again. And fill that in again. And make his eyelid thicker. So he's really starting to stare at you now, and that's simply because I've kept it white and kept it really dark. So we're now going to work on another layer, and this time we're not going to do quite so much smudging because we want to start getting our really dark bits dark again, just like we've done on our eyes. We want to go back to these areas because you'll probably notice every time you smudge with charcoal, it's not so dark anymore. So that's why we do it in layers. So now I've got to do another layer to get those really dark lines back again. So I'm kind of going back to doing a bit of drawing. So now the rest of the drawing I'm going to be doing quite a lot of flicks. You'll see me doing lots of flicks. I might still do bits of smudging, And then we'll do the last bit, which is quite fun, where we do it with a rubber. So you can see him really coming alive now. And I am going to go and do some slightly finer details. So you can see now that I've put quite a lot of flicks in, and I haven't smudged them all. And I'm going to put in his section for his whiskers. So first of all, I'm going to do a kind of line like that and give him a smudge. And then in there, I'm going to put some little dots. Maybe just give them a tiny bit of smudge. Okay, so you can see where his whiskers are going to come out. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. I'm going to just go back to this area, and I'm going to make this section just a bit darker now, because I really want it to look like this part of his mane is in front of his body. And what I can do to start giving furry sort of shapes is go cut into with these, can you see, that's a kind of, see that sort of triangle shape, and then I'm going to colour that triangle shape in. Can you see now that I've created a mark? So I'm going to do another one here. Colour that in. Maybe one over here. So they're kind of like, can you see how I'm starting to create a difference between the light and the dark there? And it's going to start looking like the edge of his mane. So I might cut into a few more bits up here. I'm going to smudge all that in a little bit, bring some of those smudgy marks up into his mane. So now you can see that this bit here is going to be his body. I think that's a bit clearer. So I'm happy with most of this. So we're going to do the very last bit, which is quite fun. And that is having a piece of rubber. So what you need to do, I've already done mine, but I'll do it again to show you, is that you need to cut a piece of rubber, a bit off your rubber. Look, watch me do that. The reason you need to do that is that what you end up with is a really sharp bit that you can use to do some really fine marks. So my little bit of rubber that I've cut off my rubber, I'm going to do his whiskers. So from here, can you see how that whisker, my rubber has rubbed out the charcoal and left a nice white line. I find that really satisfying. So there's his whiskers on that side. I'm going to do it again. That will start to get a bit dirty, so every now and then give it a rub on your finger. You have to press quite hard. And if this part of your line is not dark enough, it means you haven't put enough charcoal on there, and it might mean that you can't get these white lines. So you can always put some more on and then have another go. Okay, so you want to make sure that you can find those white lines. So now I'm going to go around my picture, and I'm going to put quite a lot of those marks with it. It doesn't need to be sharp like this now. It can be on the side, just in his mane. And then this is a good part, if you did get your eyes too dark, you can always rub them out with this rubber. Mine are okay actually, so I can leave mine. But I might start bringing some light back in here. Just the edge of his cheekbone maybe. And this one here. Maybe just here. So you can work with your picture and find bits that you want to rub out. Remember, I was having trouble trying to get the sides of his face the same, but I can keep doing that with the rubber until I'm happy. So I think I'm quite happy with that now. I might just spend a bit of time looking at it, putting some lines in, just like up here. I think I've missed this line down the middle of his nose. And I'm just going to have a play around. Maybe I've lost a few dark bits. So I hope you enjoyed doing your lion. And if you want to, you can share it with us on Arched's Facebook page. It's always good to see what people are doing at home. And come back and visit us. See what other projects we've got.